Hello, my name's Nathan Ward from the Big Story Trust, and welcome to the final vlog of 2017. And it's with great pleasure I welcome Scott Humston. So thank you for joining me, Scott. It's a pleasure to catch up with you. For people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do from a magical point of view.
Sure. So my name is Scott Humston. I've been full-time a magician, illusionist in ministry for about 25 years, actually, which is amazing. And I live in Florida, just north of Orlando, Florida. I do a lot of stuff throughout the states and occasionally other parts of the world. And my bread and butter for 23 years has been the Pro Kid Show, which is a school assembly program, and definitely with a ministry focus on that. And then we do church events as well, a weekend event called the Wonderful Weekend. And I've been doing magic since I was a kid. Very similar stories to a lot of other guys. In fact, I just did a blog post, about this last week about my first trip to a magic shop.
Oh,
yeah.
What one was it?
What's that?
What magic shop was it?
It was Tom Craven. You know who Tom Craven? Mm-hmm. It was Tom Craven had just sold the shop, but it was called VIP Magic in Auburndale, Florida. We were on the way to Walmart one day, and we turned the corner to go through downtown, and I saw this magic shop, and I already had a magic kit, and the bug had already started kind of bite me a little bit, and I saw the sign said VIP Magic, and it was in front of a store. I was like, stop, Granddad, stop. And so we went in, and he bought me Abbott's Encyclopedia of Rope Tricks for Magicians.
Oh, wow.
And I got a hank of rope. That's when I learned what a hank of rope was. I didn't know what a hank of rope was. What is a hank? It's 25 feet. That's what it is. And then I also got a ball through cup. And I still have all of those items today, except for the rope. Yeah. I still have those items, and I've not been the same since as far as the magic shop. So yeah, it was a beautiful moment.
And I know a little bit about Pro Kids Show that works in different parts of America, but it's, as the title suggests, it is a very professional children's magic show within a school context, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about that, first of all.
Sure. Yeah. So the Pro Kid Show was started in 1981 by a guy named Steve Pennington. And Steve is still, I consider, my director, one of my very best friends. I produce the show. My company produces the show. But Steve, I still go to for direction and ideas. We write and create together. We have another performer in Chicago named Tim Hannig, and Tim has been doing the show just about as long as I have. He started a couple of years after. Yeah. Although the roots of the show has its roots in another show called the People Movers Show, which was out of California in the 70s. It's very interesting kind of lineage. And so the Pro Kid Show uses music and magic and stories. It's not a magic show per se. I've had some magicians see it and go, that wasn't a magic show. But it was the best kid show I've ever seen in my life. So it uses music and magic and puppetry, comedy, of course, all to teach character education messages to kids and families. So it's a family event. Although we do a show during the day for the children, everybody comes back that night for a family night. So my average audiences in schools at family night are between 500 and 600 a night.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the idea is you go in, for example, Friday during the day, perform to the young people, and then Friday night they invite their families back. Is that right?
That's right. That's correct.
And that's not too dissimilar to the Wonderful Weekend, is it? In the sense that you're in one location doing more than one show.
Right. Yep. That's correct. That's correct. Yep.
So tell us about the Wonderful Weekend, because that's got a bit of history to it, Scott, hasn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So I'll start with the history of it. So in 1981, the very same time frame actually as the Pro Kids Show starting, a guy named Felix Snipes. And if anybody's watching this and got the Christian Conjurer, as it used to be called years ago, they would see Felix's schedule in the back of that. It was quite the schedule. Felix, before that, had been in a program, or not a program, but an evangelistic team with a couple other guys, and Felix was kind of the music guy through the 70s with another guy named Wayne Bristow and Jimmy Hodges, and so they would go into these communities and do these week-long evangelistic crusades, very much in style of like a Billy Graham event. And so this is, of course, Billy Graham was very popular during the 60s, and so kind of riding that wave of those sorts of things. But Felix noticed something. He noticed the biggest attended night of the week was the night that he did a magic show for the youth. Wow. Now, Felix, I'm going to give you a little history of him. He's passed on now, died about 5 years ago. But Felix loved magic since he was a boy. In fact, using the program out of New York, I can't think of the name of the Conjuring Arts Research Center. Thank you. It took me a minute. Conjuring Arts. I love that. I found Felix, his first mention of a IBM ring when he was 15 years old in Jackson, Mississippi, where he grew up. Wow. All the way till we put him on the cover of the Linking Ring, all these years later, and all these little pieces of history through the ring of Felix's career and interest in magic. So he decided to leave that trio of guys and really strike out on his own to create this thing called the Wonderful Weekend. Instead of for a week, it would be just a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. He got a lot of influence, too, from Andre Cole. Andre and he were very good friends. And so he started doing these events. Again, Friday night was the ESP show, basically a mentalism show. And then Saturday night was the family magic show. And then he would preach and do some more magical, as he called them, magical effects on Sunday morning and then on Sunday night. And so he did this for 25 plus years and was scheduled 4 years ahead of time. Wow. Literally. And that's not exaggeration. I have the records. I have everything. And so literally a pastor would call him, and the next time he had available was 4 years from now. Wow. So very, very amazing. And of course, through the 70s or through the 80s rather, and 90s, and he was so busy doing that. Then he had some physical problems, and as he got older, and wasn't quite sure what the diagnosis was, but pretty much it was MS, multiple sclerosis. Yeah. And he passed the ministry on to me. I can tell you that story if you want to. It's a really God moment.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So I was doing the Pro Kid show. I was doing a lot of church events on my own. I had been connected through him originally, I think through Sammy Smith. And Sammy is the editor of the Linking Ring magazine now. But Sammy and I, in fact, he only lives just a couple miles from me right here. Oh, wow. And so we were friends. And so Sammy connected me with Felix. And I was in Atlanta doing an event for a church. And I called Felix. And he was getting ready to leave. I had just got there. I think I was there Wednesday to Sunday. And he was getting ready to leave for a weekend. And he goes, why don't we have lunch? And so I went out and had lunch with him. And told him a little bit about what I was doing. I was in my, I don't know, late 20s at that point, maybe mid 20s. And he said, well, after lunch, he said, let me take you and show you some of the operations. So he took me to his printer, this guy who printed all this material for him, because Felix and Andre, honestly, were the only guys using full color. 35 years ago. If you look at David Ginn's Promoting Me and You 2 book, they're the only guys in there with like color stuff. And they're, both these Christian evangelists basically, which was fantastic. So Felix was doing stuff first class long before first class was cool, And so Felix showed me this operation. I came back to Florida here and tried to duplicate it a little bit what he showed me and failed miserably, honestly. And then I decided to write him a letter. I wrote him a 3-page letter that said, hey, if you ever want to mentor somebody, I'm interested, I didn't send it to him. God checked my heart, honestly, and said, you're not ready for this, basically. And so I kept that letter in my computer, and several years later, I got a call from Sammy Smith, and he said, "Hey, guess who called me today?" And I said, "Who?" He said, "Felix Snipes." I said, "Really?" I said, "How is he doing?" Now, let me say, I had heard he'd retired, okay? And I thought, wow, he retired, and I kind of missed this boat, right? So in between time, I had heard that, and I thought, well, God's got something else planned. And my wife and I had been talking about what does the future hold for me and the ministry and my work. So if Sammy called and said, Felix called me, and I said, what did he want? And he said, he's looking for you. I was like, what? He said, he's looking for you. Now, I had not talked to Felix since we had lunch in Atlanta years earlier.
Yeah.
Not talked to him at all. And I went, wow, really? And he goes, yeah. And I knew what it meant. I mean, I knew what that call meant. So I called him. He could hardly talk, and Felix had a tremendous voice, a very beautiful baritone voice. And so I called him, and we talked and started emailing, and decided to work together. And I was on my way to Ohio with the whole family. We had a motorhome for years. We traveled together in the motorhome. And so we were heading to Ohio, and we stopped by Atlanta, spent a day with Felix. And I can tell you this now because he's gone. I signed a 30-page agreement with him to take over these programs. 30 pages, holy cow! And I still have it. It's a hoot and a half. And so anyhow, we started doing the programs. Some of them were still on the schedule that he had, that he had not completed. And then, and I will say, by the way, what's the difference? Well, through that period of connecting with him and writing him that letter, and that I went through what I refer to as the refiner's fire, personally, in my own spiritual walk. I was a Christian before that, but I some denominations will call it sanctification. I believe that sanctification is a process, not an event, personally. But it was a good thing I'd gone through. God was really tweaking me and purging me of sin in my life that I knew shouldn't be there. And so through all of that, coming at the other side of that, going, wow, this ministry, I've got some big shoes to fill. And so we're still doing it to this day. I'm not, for those of you wondering, I'm not booked 4 years out, but which would be nice. Obviously, times have changed, ministry has changed, economies have changed, and so it is a new world in many ways, especially in proclaiming the gospel. So I'm doing things that Felix never dreamed of doing, and I mean that in a good way. And I'm taking it and doing things with the idea and the ministry that that he never gave thought to, but it's still progressing. And I will tell you this, from a Christian perspective, and a eternal perspective, I saw more decisions for Christ, first-time commitments for Christ in the first year of doing the Wonderful Weekend than I had seen in the previous 15 years of my church ministry. Wow. So it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Anointed thing. It is. And so, and because it's very intentional. So it's a very intentional.
Tell us about how your program's intentional.
Sure. So first of all, it takes a church about 3 months to prepare for the event. Okay. And how do they prepare? Well, we have a manual that guides them through promotion, through preparation, all of these things. So we lay the foundation and expectation. Expectation is a big thing. We want them. I don't want it to be heady, if you know that word. I don't want it to be egocentric, right. Because it's not about that. But I want the church to prepare well. I want them to prepare as best they can. And what does that look like? It means making sure that, again, the promotion is there, to let people know about the events, that the space I'm going to be in is workable. I can work in almost any space, but I got to know what I'm dealing with. So, workable from that regard. The event itself is a fun, interactive show that you would see. And Felix and I had the same philosophy about this. The entertainment, the magic tricks, are the same as you might go see at a theater or a performing arts center or a school family night. And and I'm gonna digress for a moment here. It was sort of God promises to bless the preaching of His word. Okay, not magic tricks, not music. All of those things can be a blessing to people, but His word doesn't return void. That's what the scriptures tell us. So, in doing, Felix and I had the same philosophy, and that is we're not really gospel magicians. We are evangelists that use magic tricks to bring in the audience. And so we do the best show, quote unquote, we can do, and then present a message. And sometimes as gospel magicians, we and I was influenced early as a child with a gospel magician, actually, but we can talk about that. But many times we forget the focus of what we're doing. And in other words, I have this little handkerchief, and I put the handkerchief in my hand, and it represents Christ in the tomb. And I talk about, and then they went to the tomb, and they opened the tomb, and Christ is gone. And I use that, and the handkerchief is gone. Well, let's look at children, for instance. What is a children going to think about when you open your hand and that handkerchief is gone, and that's supposed to be Christ? A child is going to be wondering, where did the handkerchief go? Right?
Yeah.
Of course, it's a trick that they're not going to be thinking about the miracle that you just told them about. That someone that was crucified and put in a tomb, and all of these things, and the stone was rolled away, they're not going to be processing all of that because they're so focused on the trick. So I think it's very important to make sure that we're giving a clear message of what we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So would I be right in assuming that you go in, do a good solid magic show, and then you have a message at the end, and the message at the end you don't necessarily use magic to deliver?
Yes, that's correct. That's exactly correct. Now, I still do what would be considered maybe illustration.
Yeah.
I'll still do that to lead into the message. I think that's important. Again, Christ told parables, right? He told stories. That's how He got there, right? I always consider what I do, whether it's in church or in our school events, to be good theater. And what is good theater? Good to me, and I have a theater degree.
Oh, wow.
Good theater is a mirror, right? And a mirror to the audience. And what you see in that mirror may not be what I see in that mirror, right? And I think the gospel is like that, when we present the gospel, it's going to affect you different than it's going to affect someone else. The end game is the same, but you're dealing, we're unique beings, and so we're going to interpret that different. So if I can hold up a mirror to the audience, whether it's through a piece that I do or magic trick that I do or even a message that I do, if I can be honest and transparent myself, but yet allow people to see themselves in that role, and I think that's most effective.
How do you go about putting your program together?
Well, let's break it down. The school event or the church event?
The church event.
Okay. I think first and foremost, and this is what I tell churches that bring me in, you have to begin with the end in mind, right? So what do we want out of this? So if you're doing a program for a church, what do you want the end result to be? Now, that could be there's not a wrong answer to that.
No.
As an evangelist myself, I want the end result to be decisions for Christ. Okay, that's what I have a calling for. But in some cases, if I do a one-night event at a church, that may not be the focus. It may just be fun, clean, good, wholesome entertainment for a group of pastors or people in the church or a family. So, that may not be the end result for someone as a Christian and a magician. And by the way, if you're watching this and you haven't watched John Archer's interview, watch that, because that's a great interview, by the way. And I really enjoyed that. So there are people out there that are Christians that are entertainers that are just there to entertain,
Yeah.
and they're going to do it in a great way. So I begin with the end in mind, basically, and say, okay, what needs to happen at the end of my event? Is it just to uplift and motivate people? And I don't mean that just in a secular way.
No.
So if that's it, then I structure my program accordingly, and then I will typically do the message near the end of it. Near the end of the program, I'll do a message, and then at the end of the message, I'll do a final piece, a final trick. If I'm in a church situation, again with the Wonderful Weekend, it's entertainment, and then it's illustration, then it's message, then it's an invitation to come to Christ, and then I go to the prayer room with people. So I don't end on the big note. I end with the message and the delivery of the gospel. So, but again, if I'm doing a one-night event where people just want to be entertained or uplifted, then I may end with a piece and do the message before that. And sometimes the message can, be a few sentences. Sometimes it can be, a few paragraphs.
Wow. And would you say that you've got core material that you then mould into those different situations, or do you start from bottom up or top down, as it were, each time?
Yeah. No, I definitely have. I have a lot of material that I've been able to refine over the years, but like everybody else, I have A material and B material and C material, So I typically will, whatever is currently A material that I'm doing, that's what I'll do. And especially in a one-time program, I pretty much have a set. Hey, this is, I open with this, I do this and do this and do this, and I close with this.
Yeah.
Because to get really good at something, you need to do it over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah.
And with the stuff that you do within churches, how has the stuff that you've done with the Pro Kids show influenced that, or have they been distinctly separate?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of crossover. So when I started doing the Pro Kids show, it was really my my training ground to be good, and to have somebody look at the show and go, okay, you need to do this, and when you say this, you need to do this, and when you pick up this prop, you need to do this. And again, all those things that I was used to from a theater background, but having a director's eye to watch the show and go, okay, yeah, this and this and this, and so it also allowed me to structure my show, a beginning and a middle and an end. If I have a pet peeve at all, it's guys who do magic shows that do a trick and then a trick and then a trick and then a trick. And transitions are simple. I mean, they're obviously they're not easy, but they're simple. And you can take stuff that doesn't even feel like it should be connected together, and through a sentence or through music or through some simple transitions, you can make it flow. It needs to flow. So I learned what I call show flow. I learned that from the Pro Kids show. I learned timing from the show. As an aside, when I moved from Nashville, Tennessee to Florida, I had a theme park in Florida that kind of got me here. And so I produced and wrote and sold this theme park a show, and it was a 3.5-month contract.
Oh, wow.
By the way, I got that because of a church event, actually. I invited the owner of the park to a church event and the entertainment director, and they both came, and the entertainment director's crying after literally in a good way. She's got tears in her eyes, and the owner of the park said, "Hey, can you be in my office in the morning?" And I was like, Sure. We signed a $30,000 deal the next morning. Yeah. So, I mean, that was years ago. But, which, by the way, was not enough money, by the way. But anyhow, I only got that because of knowing how to flow that show, making it flow, making it tight. So there's not a lot of, oh, where's my next prop, or where's my, So the Pro Kids show is integral in that. And then I'm able to, about half the churches that bring me in, I'm able to say, do you want to do a school outreach event? And if you want to do a school outreach event, we'll do that on Thursday. And if they want to do another, we'll do that on the Wednesday. We'll back it up. We'll go backwards. And so I have some churches that put me in, one school or 3 or 4 schools. We've launched a church starts, church plants from the Pro Kids show. And so just some pretty amazing things because of the what I learned from that show.
Yeah. And so for people sitting at home that aren't connected into these different networks, Scott, where can they learn show flow and things like that? Where would you start? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, if I didn't know anything, I think I would reach out to maybe a local school or university, and see if you could the word just slipped my mind. Sit in on some of their classes, their theater classes. And a lot of times, if you're not doing it for credit, you can just sit there and listen. You might even consider, if you're already a performer, and I've heard this advice given before, if you're already doing some magic tricks, find somebody from a theater background that can come and watch you and come and watch your show. You can call a local community college in America. That's what we call them, but maybe a local university, maybe a theater student can come and watch you. Maybe a fourth year theater student that's studying directing. They can come and watch you. I would certainly start with that. You also might do some theater yourself.
Yeah.
Do some acting yourself. Read some books on acting and not that it's acting, but it's all about presentation and technique. And so I would start there, I think, and certainly now with the plethora of information on this internet thing, it's at your fingertips. My son is learning Greek.
Wow.
Okay, he's 11 years old. He's learning Greek. You know where? YouTube. Okay, you can look. Yeah, so it's out there. The information's out there. It's just do you want to find it? But ultimately, at some point, you got to have somebody watch you with an eye toward that and say, okay, I think maybe if you do this and this and this. I was going to tell you a story, but maybe I shouldn't. I had a friend. I'm going to go ahead and tell it anyway. I had a friend a couple of years ago that was auditioning for America's Got Talent, and he wanted to show me the trick he was doing, and so he came by and showed it to me, and I said, "You want me to be nice, or you want me to be honest?" And he said, "I want you to be honest." I said, "It's terrible. Don't do it." You know what I mean? So sometimes I wasn't mean. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to shoot him down at all. But sometimes we need some people to tell us that was terrible. Or that was really great. Or yeah, do that again. And that's the only way I get better. Is, hey, what did you think? And I'm not just looking when I ask somebody after a show, a friend, something like that. When I say, hey, what'd you think? I'm not just asking. Now, some people are, but I'm not just asking for. I don't want you to tell me how good it is. I want you to tell me what you enjoyed. What didn't you enjoy? Why didn't you enjoy it? How could I make it better? I'm much better now than I was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. If we're not getting better, that's not good.
Well, thanks a lot, Scott, for taking the time out to catch up with us.
Of course.
And for sharing some thoughts and insights both into the history and what you're up to today as well. Thanks.
Yeah. And I just might say that, hey, if they want to connect with me, they can do that at scotthumston.com.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Scott.